Kia ora. It is my honor and privilege to host the activist of activists, Tāme Iti, as CARE's activist in residence. Tāme Iti's voice is a powerful voice of our times as we identify, examine critically, and seek to challenge racism, colonialism, xenophobia, and the intersections of these three. Iti's work with activism started with his involvement in the Maori nationalist movement in New Zealand in the late 1960s and 1970s. He protested against the Vietnam War and apartheid in South Africa, and he became involved with Ngāti Matoa, a major Maori protest group of the 1970s from its early days. He joined the Communist Party of New Zealand and went to China in 1973 during the Cultural Revolution. I'm hoping we can talk a little bit with him about his engagement with China within the context of culture and cultural change. He's taken part in a number of land occupations and held a hikoi to the New Zealand Parliament. We hope to learn from these acts of activism as anchors to social change. He's worked as a radio DJ and artist. He was a partner in a restaurant in Auckland's Karangahape Road that served traditional Maori food. And hopefully from this we also learn about business, sustainability, and frameworks for sustainable imagination, particularly within the context of decolonization. He stood for Parliament as a candidate of Mana Maori in the 1996, 1999, and 2002 New Zealand general elections, and for the Maori Party in 2014. Art and creativity have been hallmarks of the protest activities that Tāme Iti has participated in. How you bring creativity into the processes of change is a lesson I hope we can learn from him through this conversation. Decolonization is a thread that has woven together his journey in seeking spaces for voices. As I have spoken with him very briefly over these last 2 days, I've been inspired by his ideas of space and making space. It is this commitment to decolonize within, to decolonize the structures we inhabit, that makes his voice a powerful and inspiring anchor to social change. Welcome to CARE, Tāme.
Thank you, my friend. It's a real privilege for me to be here and part of this conversation. And also thanks to you and to Massey University for opening and creating this space for me to be able to share these thoughts. So thank you again.
Thank you so much. You talk a lot in your conversations about space. So maybe we begin from that. How does space appear in your work?
Well, it's through the ancient stories of the separation of Rangi and Papa, through the conversation with the children. And when one of the children had discovered going through the armpit and view the space, because they didn't have the space. And so out of that came out create this conversation with the 70 children of Rangi and Papa. And so we don't want to be here. So out of that came this huge debate with each other about how to create a space. And so the children say, other part of the children say, get rid of them, knock them out. And so out of that conversation, Tāne didn't say anything. Tāne was the one who decided to create this space, lied out on his back on Mum, on Papa Tuanuku, and out with his legs out there and push them out there and they create the space. And so, and I guess that for every human being, there had to be a time when we leave home and create a space and let them go freely. So I thought that is the story, and the way that we process ourselves on the marae ātea. And when any people that arrive to the marae, you come to the gateway, and that is the gateway where that space has been created. So you don't go walk onto the marae and walk up there and say, "Hi, my friend, my name is George." No, you don't do that. You had to walk in there, and it's a process. So there's a conversation right from the beginning as we enter to the gate. Then a person will arrive there with a taiha, eye contact, check you out. You got to be ready and lay out the taki on the ground. And as soon as then that's the first part of the process. Let it go, get picked up. It's like the branch of peace or the branch of war. And once they picked him, that person picked the taki, the visitors, and then he go back, and then two voices appeared. And then the woman is the first voice that appeared, and they will make the call. And that first call is a conversation. And they will call out, that call will go, welcome. Welcome to my home, welcome to my mountains. And then that voice will provide all of the data informations. Who is here, the name of the people, and then to the response to that, the other voice will say, preaching to you from here, from this party that come from the Taitokoro. So all of that create those conversations. And so allow you to walk onto the middle of the marae there where the space is. And also to remind you, because when those voices, when the voices are happening, the voices are going a two-way thing, not just physically, but also spiritually. They're the voice that call out the ancestor and call the voice carry on and pull the environment, the energy of the sky, bush, and everybody around there to contain it. So it's a beautiful way that we're able to open that space, and then we start those conversations. And so we need to have that type of process. So I'm a great believer in the rituals that enable us to breathe, to give us time to think about things. We give us time to think about those who are not here. So you're not just walking alone, and even if you're by yourself, but you're not by yourself, because you're carrying with you your whakapapa, your genealogy, because you are a byproduct of somebody from way back. So all of that are interesting part of meeting with each other.
How beautiful. You know, one of the things that appears salient here in the idea of space is respecting the past. Now, it seems that...
Well, your past, when we see, because when you walk into the marae there, because immediately in front of you is your past. Your past not behind you. You know, every now and then we bump into our past. And so you walk into the past. So you bring the ideas into that. So it's that two ways types of conversation. You kind of work there. So I'm not just talking to you. I'm talking to everybody who are here, but also the people not here, but also talking to all those that was here. Understand?
Yes.
Yeah.
So when referring to that past, particularly thinking about colonization, when there has been so much violence to shut off space, how does one access that past, especially when one has been told that that past was primitive, it was not good enough, one has to upgrade to come to the present?
Well, you can't just walk into that space. So we managed to maintain and retain that, or those rituals. And, even the structure around that particular, the marae, the pa, the community are very well contained. And I know that one of the first things that the colonizer, when they brought the troops into part of the area, and when they issue, so the first thing that the colonizer had to do, they had to find, they thought that this country is beautiful. They had the trees, the fresh, they had everything here. The only problem is, I was in the way, people in the way. So they had to find a way to deal with that, and so they had to come up with policies. So the first thing that they did was they were brave enough to introduce called the 1863 Rebellious Act of Parliament that they write it down themselves to justify why they need to come and if you open your mouth, you're a rebel. And so they responded by that, and they used that as a way to get rid of you out of the space. So they actually did it. They did it in Tūhoe, the Waikato, up north, all over the country. And so they arrived there, and so they issued an eviction notices. They gave us 3 months there to move out of the space, and if you're still there in 3 months' time there, well, they just come down there. So they burn the gardens down, they burn the house down, they burn the marae out there down, and they ship you miles out of the space because you cause a problem. You know, and and so our people had to work underground in the way to find a way. What is happening? You know, and and so our people did resist. They didn't just went back. So they had to trying to find another way that they can deal with how to resist against the power of British colonial system. Wasn't just happening here in Aotearoa, was happening in India, happening in Africa, was happening in Canada, right around the world. You know, they already done a lot of practice, a lot of training, and that's just another part of their colonial power, of the power of the colonizers.
So one of the things, I'm thinking you brought up India, so I will refer to that, referring to my past, right? One of the things that seems salient that happened there is that you silence voices to move people out of the space.
Yes.
And it seems that that is continuing to happen today.
Yes, it still is in several many ways, but for India in the 1800s and towards the end of the 1800s, you had passive resistance of people like Te Piti Arunamai Taranaki in Parihaka. And he was the one he inspired Mahatma Gandhi, who followed the kōrero and the story of Te Piti Arunamai. And he himself took the same action on passive resistance. So people like Te Piti Arunamai, and then of course Ruakenana, and then of course come to our generation, and we still carry the raising of the flags and still trying to find a way that we can, our voice needs to be heard. So they tried in Parliament, they tried with the 4 Māori seats with Ngata, Carroll, Buck, and Pōmari, you know, and so they tried with those guys, but they were the forefronts of the of tribal people to take policy of colonial mentality to those community. They also convinced the community they need to chop the trees down because I think that this place looked like good sheep farming, dairy farming, but it didn't work. The people that allowed that to happen, our ancestors, didn't see the impact of that, the impact of dairy farming and sheep farming. And as a result, we're now trying to heal all the things that have happened in the last 100 years. And it's supposed to generate industry for our people here in this country.
So part of the process of saying your voice is not important, to me it appears is racism, in a way that your voice is marked as not good enough as our voices.
Well, racism is just another tool that they use quite openly about their racism. By saying that our ritual is barbaric, our carvings are barbaric, and you know it's all the negativities. It's part of the colonial system to undermine, to trample over the mana of the people. That's the first thing. And in fact, we're probably much more effective for any colonial system to undermine your culture rather than put a bullet in your head. And then putting a bullet in the head wasn't really an easy thing too, because our people are very good at fighting too. So they had to find a lot smarter way, and I think that's the most powerful thing for them to do is to homogenize the culture as you're trying to work out Jesus, you follow in the word, in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. That's the way we need to love each other. And so they managed to convince young people to follow that. My ancestor, William Tāme Iti, Tāme Iti, was the one that he thought that was a great idea, that maybe we set up the kingdom of Aotearoa. And so he started a campaign to create the kingdom. And he took that conversation in quite a few places and engaged people involved in that. As a result of that, you had the first king Tapio, Te Whirawhiro. And that didn't work, you know, and so look at what we're doing today, you know, and for me, for the first 15 years, 18 years of my life as a child, it took me that period of time before I decided to open my mouth, because I spent the first 18 years of my life just working, listening, and trying to work out good things. Because you know, as a child, as you grow up, you see things, you hear things, and you see things doesn't look good, doesn't sound good, it doesn't smell nice, you know, and because we didn't have a manual book to deal with it. And so I discover people like Fidel Castro, Che Guevara, seized the time with the Black Panthers, Mahatma Gandhi, Mao Zedong. I learned a lot about Marx, Lenin, Engels, and all of these characters, and brought about another idea. And I was so excited by discovering new thought that other people outside me are saying the same thing. They're actually doing it and resisting against the power of colonization. So I was very much inspired by that. So I made a lot of commitments in those really early years of my life as a young man, to do a lot of reading, having a lot of conversation. And I think there was also the period of time where conflicts are happening right around the world. In Vietnam, in Africa, and right around, particularly in Southeast Asia, Cambodia, what the Americans were doing, and allowed us to, the whole world was talking, the whole world was moving, the women's liberation movements, and there was a whole different groups of activists that were having. And also there are a lot of activists from the early century, from the 1900s, and the activists that during that opposed to the First World War, that opposed to the Second World War, and they were still around in my period of time, and was really interesting having those conversations with a lot of the old activists, and give me a better understanding globally, and where I need to put myself to and make those commitments.
Mm-hmm. So you talked about at 18, sort of starting to speak up and express your voice. So is that around the time when you joined the Communist Party then?
No, I didn't really immediately join up the Communist Party, but I did meet an old comrade in the middle of at the square in Christchurch, where he was delivering a paper called The People's Voice. And The People's Voice was a small 4-page magazine, a lot of words in it, in a whole different language. And so I started reading a lot of that. But that was also in the period of time when the attitude and the behavior of racism was very strong. And in fact, a lot of the racism in Christchurch during that period of time, they were pretty open about it. So it was very difficult for us as a Māori, young Māori person, to be able to get a flat, because my skin was brown, my hair was long. So you have all, so there was difficulties for us. And even I remember I worked for an Irishman when I first done my second year of an apprenticeship. I ended up working with an Irishman, and he had contract work working with the Christchurch City Council, and they had units for all the old war veterans from the Boer War, the First War, and then he chopped me off in one of those units, and he said, "You'll be right." Yep. So I got all my paint there, my paperwork, and he took off, and I went and knocked on the door. And when the guy opened the door, he saw me and he said to me, "What are you doing here?" And I didn't know what to say. And he said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Well, I'm the painter, I come here." "Get out." I didn't know what to say because I never experienced that. And somebody would tell me shoes off. And so I walked out. We didn't have phones back in those days. We didn't have cell phones. So I just walked away and didn't do anything. And then the Irish guy turned up about 1 o'clock that afternoon and saw me still. "What you doing out here?" The man in there told me the kids. Oh, he got really upset. He was a tenant. He's an old war veteran from the Boer War, and so he got a roboball, and he had to go with him. And that's those sort of kind of experiences I'm talking about. And when you go through all of that, when you in the days when you had to walk into the picture theatre, and then before the film started, and they would play "God Save the Queen," and they'll play the national anthem, then everybody had to stand up. And I remember there was a very small group of us remained seated, and we didn't stand up, and then all the white folks at the back there told us to get up and stand up to the Queen, and we say, "Stuff you." And so we had a fight there, so we had to get out of the place. All of that sort of kind of experience. When you get through those experiences, when you go through the experience as a young Māori man, just going for a walk, and just going for a run at 8 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night there in the winter time, and you get picked up by the policeman. They want to know what you're doing running on the street. So all of those experience. So we go through all of those experiences. What do you do? And so you either get angry. Yes, I was angry, but I didn't know where to take my anger to. I didn't know where to take that story, where I need to take that kind of experiences that we have. So many of us in my generation are talking about we experience those sort of kind of things. And we found out that we're not the only people that it was happening, particularly in Christchurch for us during that period of time.
So it seems like Christchurch has had a long history of racism in that sense.
Oh yeah, very much so. Yeah, very much so. And I'm not saying that there are also really good people in Christchurch, but also a very strong of racism. Attitude of the police, the attitude of landlords, the attitude of people that the way they kind of look at us, and during that whole period of time.
You know, one thing, Tāme, that sort of speaks out as you're sharing these experiences is sort of the everyday forms of violence in racism that are normalized in society. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. Well, violence has been perpetuated by the state in many shape and form, subtly in a lot of ways too. And the punishment of children at school just for speaking this language. Many of us, my generation, have experienced that. And when you take those conversations back to home, and share with your parents, and they say, "Well, they're the boss. You got to listen to it," and that's not what I wanted to hear. And you kind of think, "Am I in the right place?" I'm thinking as a child, "Am I in the right place?" Just something not quite right. I didn't really like the fact that you get strapped. I mean, literally, they should strap you for doing certain things. That's physical violence perpetuated by the states, and they kind of normalize it for you know, it happened to my father, but he didn't really talk much about it. In fact, he didn't even talk about it. And until we experienced that, and until, what's that happening to you? And so violence in being perpetuated, just the policy of government is violent, and they perpetuate violence in many shape and form, and the removal of people away from their homelands is violent. And but they always say, oh, it's better for you that you can do things. If we tell you go that way, it's a better future for you away from that. Because they had plans for themselves to be in the space, but not for you to be in the space. And so they created those.
And yet it appears that if you're a colonized person, to be able to speak up, you're marked as the violent one, as the terrorist, as the threat to the system.
Of course. Yeah, of course. You know, I know all about it. You know, in a way, when the thing is, when you open yourself to this, and I don't hide the fact that about my own opinion about things. I always trying to find a way that there needs to be a better way that we can do things, and the Pākehā need to do something about it, or they need to respect those. If you don't have respect and hear a voice, then I'm going to create a chaos until you sit down there and look at me at the eyes, and not to make judgment of it. And and so we did that. We did many actions that we had to do that. We have to. I make no apologies of those actions. And so we're not going to back off. But we did little small action, non-passive action. And the setting up of a tent in Parliament grounds to create a thought around, I am here, you see me, I'm going to sleep here, and I'm going to be here, I'm not too sure how long for. I'm not here by myself, but I'm here. I'm part and parcel of a movement, a group of people. And it took me a while there that you need to mobilize the consciousness and to build up a group of people. And that's a big task. That's really, you're talking about making commitments. So after I've done my apprenticeship, I kind of moved. I don't want to be an interior decorator. I don't want to carry on there. I think it's quite, you got to make it fun. You got to make it exciting. And so we learned to pull and talk to many groups of people, all activists from the 20s and the 30s. We talked to a lot of the workers. And that's what I like about the different various group of the socialist movements, because they're able to bend and brought about a more structured ways of trying to mobilize people. So we're not just doing things randomly and angrily with anger in the stomach and just getting nuts out about it, but more kind of have a better understanding where we're going to, why, where we are, to understand more about the enemy. We got to be able to know, as we say, that the word that we use, hongia te pepeia, to know your enemy. And so we can't just go there randomly. So everything had to be planned in a way that we can move it strategically, and how we can, who do we need to talk to. So you had to bring your kaumātua, us the young people got to be part of that. We got to bring the different groups of people that we have something in common. There may be other things I might not like about you, but I do like other parts of you. So let's have a talk about it. Let's have a sit down and have a cup of coffee, have a cigarette, and have a beer or something like that, and let's have a talk. And so that's what we've done for many years, and then we build up. And so it's a combination of two things that we must work on it. It's the theory, the ideas and the theory and the practice of it. So you have the idea, the theory, so how do we implement that? How we can pull that together. So it's like weaving the baskets. So you pull that together. So you're able to put a lot of stuff in there in containers. So you might need 10 kete, you might need 20 kete. So each of the kete compartments that you bring all your skillful people that can do this. So you had to have your engineers, you had to have your gardeners, you had to have your builders, and all of that are the intricate part of building the movement. The movement must be built by everybody. It had to be transparent. So it's not a secret organization. Never want to be part of a secret agent. Yeah. And so, of course, they brought their secret agents. They plant their secret agents all over. They're trying to bring it into the movements. So we had to be very careful about that, who we bring into the space. And you only had to work with people, particularly in the early days of activism. And we had to be very careful because they do bring spies around there. During that period, they've been doing it for hundreds of years. They did it 100 years ago, and they're still doing it today.
So, one thing that is beautiful in this is that in a lot of this action, it seems to be it's action for voice.
Yes.
Can you give some examples of actions that demonstrate how you sought to bring out voice through that?
Yeah. Well, I think you've got to take your voice in different ways. There are many ways of action that you need to do, and then one of them that we normally done is, we have done at Waitangi Days are really interesting. A good time that we organised those types of action 20, 30 years ago. So we tried the one traffic control. In traffic control, you need to place some 44-gallon drums there, and it's just like guys working on the road. So you don't actually block the road. So the vehicles, you just hold it, and they say people cleaning the roads here, and we'll give you 5 minutes, and then you go. So what we normally do in action like that, traffic control, and you get someone, just hold someone for a second there, so you don't get charged for anything else. So you got to be smart how you do it, or else you end up with kidnapping. And so, and so you got to be smart about all movement. And one person will be talking to the driver. Today is Waitangi Day. In 1860, this place, Tūhoe, was invaded by the colonizer, and they accepted us. So you're giving information. You only need about 5 seconds of those information. Something that the driver, and okay. Move. So the next one. So you do a lot of those sort of types of non-violent actions of a movement. So it's a really powerful thing. Some people not happy with it. They'll be very abusive, but never respond aggressively. You just let them give the same message to everybody. And then the next person go and have a go at it. All that is to give a voice to the people they're going, because the road is the power of the state. They control the way people move on the road, and you got to be able to capture those moments, and to the point that they can't charge you for all sorts of things until the police force arrive there and move it, then you disperse. Then you do another action, and then we did another action, issuing eviction notices to everybody in the whole area, and you issue eviction notices, giving people. We're giving you 12 months to vacate stolen properties. And all that are things for people. What's Tāme Iti doing, And it's a good action too. And so you got to work it in a way. How you, because all that is to provoke the idea to your neighbours, to your community, and to generate those conversations. Because if you don't do it, nobody would know. And some might say, well, we got a letter from the Manamuchaki Tūhoe where Tāme Iti those radicals. But they started a conversation in the kitchen. In fact, it went to the radio, and Radio Pacific made a phone call to me. Radio Pacific talkback show, and then they say, I was the first call at 6 o'clock in the morning. Tāme Iti, why you issued this illegal eviction notices in Tāne as a peaceful place? Well, that was an opportunity for me because they have a 35,000 people listeners at that particular hour of the morning. They say, in fact, in 1860, we also were issued with eviction notices. And we were only given 3 months to vacate his property. And those who failed to move were shot on the spot. Those who managed to escape. And those, not only that they were shot on the spot, they burned the gardens down, burned the marae down there. Those who managed to get away from the guns and the atrocities and the chaos, we are here to tell the story. Then you slam the phone that you got 35,000 other people who heard their story. So we had to create this approach and to share the story because they don't teach them at the school. So you've got to find a way that we are able to articulate this conversation in a wider audience. So we've done many of those sort of types of action. So we continue to do that for quite some time. And so you end up where you be labeled by the media. The media don't actually look at the content, so they just look at radicals, communists, sisters, and all of that.
So this stigmatization is part of the media industry, right? That actively construct a specific image. To me, it appears as a way to silence the voice.
Yes.
Because when you can project someone as a terrorist threat, for instance, then you can conveniently shut off the opportunity for voice.
Yes.
So I guess, and that also then, I suppose, sends out messages to others that, look, if you speak up, there are consequences. So how does one work in both teaching oneself as well as teaching others that you have to challenge these strategies of labeling if you want to really make space for voice?
Yes, that is a very good question, and I think that what really helped us in many ways, you have to have all of these different conversations with a different group of people. You also had to try and maintain the mobilizations of people on the ground. So you got to have your troops on the ground. It's very vital for you to have your people that you can trust. Where do you go to? So you have all of these different actions. Not everybody wanted to go in the middle of the road. Yeah, so you got a group of people, but they had to be very disciplined. And you had to be disciplined. There's certain things you can't do. So there had to be kawa and tikana that we had to deal with that. And then, of course, then we had to have people in the system itself and see if we can get a gap into there, and so we can walk our way in through there. And then, of course, you got the politicians are very opportunists, and they also want to gain, they want to be seen part of, they've been involved talking to the activists, and they come in there, they come and go, politicians come and go, because they're looking for votes. They want to hijack your actions. So they tend to try and hijack your and say, oh, I think if we at the Labour Party will be able to support you, we'll come up with some new policies, then enable you to have this conversation. Maybe we'll come up with a Waitangi tribunal. That's how all of these things came about. And so there had to be a whole kind of different levels of that. It's a big man, and it's a risk for a lot of people. You know, some people who work in the system, it's very risky for them to be participating in a lot of this action because they could easily get kicked off their job and they no longer have a job, and so forth. So you have, it's a learning thing for us. And also a teaching them to talk to other people. So it had to be those ongoing movements of consciousness.
And part of that also seems internal. So when you talk about decolonizing ourselves, in a way that I have to teach myself to conquer this fear so that I'm able to do it, because I've been told to do anything that doesn't fit.
Well, I had to do that too myself in many ways. In many ways I had to do that. I had to change my own racism. I had to kind of change that. And so it took me a long time. It's not actually the Pākehā I'm talking to. It's the system that, of the colonial system that actually I'm fighting against. Because there are many other people Pākehā who don't agree with their Pākehā system. And so that took me to, so I kind of had to let go. So I'm not looking at you because of the colour of your skin. So I'm responding to the policy, to the written words, and being created by those who want to dominate, the domination who want to have the mana for themselves, for the elitists of the filthy few. And so, so that's what we are dealing with. And so it's got to have some sort of kind of balance with it. So it's not a Māori thing, it's not a Pākehā thing, but activism is to activate, to bring a bit of order for all of us, because we got to share the same space. And we just had to, we had to be real about it. You're here, they here, and I'm here. So let's work it together. But the mana is the people at the Tāngata Whenua. So we want to work with you.
There seems so much creativity in this whole process. Does that connect to your work as an artist as well?
Yeah. And I think that I, from an artist's point of view, I tend, and it's why I work with a guy called Lemi Panapasia. It's a really interesting experience for me, who Lemi had followed us and myself for many years. And he said to me, you know Shakespeare? Shakespeare? Who's Shakespeare? I was having them on, of course. He said, well, you know, and I can take your story to the world and share it to the world. And so, oh, okay. So we had this conversation. We had many coffees and conversation around the table and creating the idea. And the thing I love about the way he does his work in theatre with Lemi is that he doesn't write them, but he creates the works. And it's a very smart way of it. And so he doesn't pick people that come from the institution who are drama students and they've done a degree on it, but he really look at the traditional people. And so learning, because the traditional people are haka people like me, because we know how to move, the shift. So it's a movements of movements and bringing that together. So he created his work. And he created the works because I'm telling the story. How do you share this story to people who don't know anything about Tūhoe? So you use the concept of Shakespeare in the story of Shakespeare. And what's their story on Shakespeare? But maybe not. One of those stories, Shakespeare, he used that as a concept. And so the people who are watching in Europe will know that's a Shakespeare story. You know, it's a bit like Juliet and Romeo and Juliet story, but it's our version here. And so using that sort of kind of concept and take that story there to share it down. So I did 10 years of that, using theatre as a way just to take that story. That was just before the police raid in 2007. So I went there about 2006 and travelled to Tempest, the story Tempest. Yeah, in the story of Tempest, you know, the guy ended up on the island, and then and over the period of time, other people landed on the island, and then the guy in the island become the magical fellow and pulling people together. So the island in the Uruwe, I'm the magical fella. They're trying to pull people together to share the stories. And so we use that as the story to share with the world. And of course, painting also is a really good thing for me. So I kind of shifted around from my actions, working throwing rocks at everybody, but trying to find another pattern, another way that I can take these stories. And I think it's really important for us to the narrative and the way we tell our stories to your audience, to the people that need to hear your story, anywhere in the world. Yeah. So I used the theatre, painting. Painting is a really interesting part. I did an exhibition called Blackboard. In the story of the blackboard, in the exhibition Blackboard, a reference to the days when they used to punish us and made us write 100 lines. I will not speak Māori. You had to write it 100 times. It's a punishment. And so that all the kids would have to watch you writing the 100 lines. So I did a series of work called Blackboard on that. And, I mean, when I first doing that was a really scary experience for me to be an artist, to expose myself to the audience. And people came to see. And it's in the story, in the work, not necessarily the painting, but it's a story in your artwork. Generates an interest and bring and also it's a healing process for people from my generation. They need to cry about it. They need to take their anger somewhere. But ours is a good place there we can paint it and hang it up. It's like taking something from here and put it out there. It's no longer in here. So you kind of let go of some things. So there are several ways that we need to let go of some things as an activist, and to enable us to move, so we don't leave things there and start to rot away, and so we're able to breathe.
There seems to be such an international dimension to your work in terms of travels, engaging with different communities. I'm really interested particularly about the part that you shared in your work with China and the Cultural Revolution. Could you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, I was a little bit naive, really, basically about in those early days about Chinese politics. But I was, what really intrigued me was physically being over there. And I just never seen, probably like in India, but I never seen multitude of people. I mean, multitude. You know, you're looking at, you can walk out in the street, you get a few 150, but multitude of people. And you can feel it, the energy of the 70s, of the Cultural Revolution, the flags, the music, the exercise, everything was happening right there and then. And what also amazed me, seeing like little wee ants moving the whole mountain, and people just shifting. They didn't have big machines. The people are the machine, and the mobilization of commitments to develop of the new order under the leadership of the Communist Party, all of that. So it took me a long time for me to really understand the power of politics, of movements, politically, constructively, of a party movements, and in the government. So you had to have a lot of people on the ground to be able to shift the people to make things. And so there's a big shift there going from Hong Kong, which is still very much under the British, and walking into China, totally different. And so on this side there, I saw a whole lot of different perspective of colonialism very strong there in Hong Kong under the power of the British Empire. And so that really was shifting my thing. When you think about how did they move people like that? What made them ticks? And so when you look at the shape of form, so they had images of Marx, Engels, Lenin, Joseph Stalin, and Mao Zedong. And you try to figure out, well, what are these faces? Who are the faces? and they have them all over the place. They are images of face that represent. What do they represent? And so I had to work out what are they saying. So as a young man, as a young activist, I had to try and process this, and I had to come home back to Aotearoa. And during that period of time, things were happening in Vietnam, the National Liberation Front in North Vietnam, the South Vietnam was under the American imperial. All of those things were happening during that period of time. There was also the period of time of the of black activism in the USA. So all of these things were really happening during that period of time. So I had to try and then process all of that. And so I had to rewrite my whole thinking again. Yeah, and so there need to be some shape or form that I had to let go of some stuff. There was also a bit of a struggle within the political socialist movement, communist movement here in Aotearoa. There's the old rhetoric communist stuff that was happening. I wasn't really too happy about it. And so we debated these issues, you know, and because the rhetoric stuff about the social system, about the working class and the bourgeoisie and the middle class. And so they didn't really have a conversation about the national movements or the Māori movement, because everything based on between the haves and have-nots. And so we need to debate this whole issue. We need to debate the issue about a nationalism of Māoritana. You can't just push that aside, or you're also guilty of what the colonizer are doing. So there was a big debate and arguments between the idealists of socialism, of communism that was appearing here in Aotearoa and in the Pacific, and also internationally. So where do the indigenous people fit in it? Because a lot of these social movements were happening in the Philippines, all around in India, Indonesia, or Africa, and it was just, yeah, and just there was a period with a very strong anti-communist rhetoric stuff that was happening right around internationally too. And so they're saying, they're saying, so watch out for the comos, or they come and rape your wife and burn your house. And all that, so we had to deal with all those propaganda that we had to deal with during that period of time.
So one thing, you know, it's really interesting is that you have continued to engage China, and that work has shifted now.
Yeah, well, it's in another shape or form. Yeah. It's another shape or form. And so, well, it's a whakapapa with us. There is a connection with some of the people, because you got all the different ethnic groups you got in China. They actually whakapapa who had, we discovered that there are people in Taiwan, are the same group of people there in south of China. They also got a whakapapa. And it was through the guy called Debbie Ali, who we have met over in China through a small Māori delegation that visited China during that period of time, introduced us to this conversation with the Chinese. Yes, and I continue to maintain those relationships with the Chinese community at different levels, and they were really keen to participate and have this relationship with which I'm having it today. We had to radicalize the way that we do business in the way it's not it's a different framework. It had to be a win-win for them, for us, for the people in the home. And I always say to a lot of our people that we are living on the gold mine. So how do we do that? And so we can't rely going to the big city in Auckland and work for big the freezing works and so forth. So we had to be more kind of creative. And well, what have we got? And what hasn't worked? Well, what can work for us? And so so I'm having several levels of conversation with the Chinese at their culture, and then work in small business with honey and so forth.
So can you talk a little bit about that? Because this sounds so inspiring, and it builds into what you said, that we cannot just challenge, but we have to then build alternatives.
Yeah. Well, the small business we working on is honey, and but well, we need to talk with the bees because our honey, our manuka honey is a big industry. But Tanata Pinu need to be in control of that. We don't just want big bee companies and beehive companies to come into our space and take over it. And then you give a bucket of honey for it. No, it can't work that way. It had to be a collaboration between the landowners and the Tanata Whenua, and then we produce, we get the honey, and then we whakawhanauna tana. And then we sold their products there. All that is working in collaboration. It's a really interesting concept for us. So it's not for us to make a lot of money, but also to build a relationship and friendship that will work for them and work for us. And it worked really well for us in a small way. So that's what I'm introducing with my Malay Chinese partner, business partner, and working their way. And so I'm directing the whole operation like that here in Aotearoa.
So how do you make sure that that works for Maori and for everyday Maori people?
Yeah, well, you have to be. The conversation must be, we have to be transparent about it. And so when you talk, my role is to talk to the whānau. Then the whānau come in there. So it's not talking to the uncle. The uncle, if I'm talking to the uncle needs to talk to everybody and everybody being into the space. Because there's already a process that we can work on it. So it's not a wheeling and dealing. It is a wheeling and dealing, but everybody needs to know what that is, and if it works for them. It's sustainable. And so it works in several ways. Part of that relationship, kaitahi, eats together. We talk together. We have some music, and we hang out together. And then, so part of it, we take that conversation to people. We train the people. They can own the beehives, but we also train the people on the ground there to learn how to work with the bees. So they become the beekeepers. Not only they become the beekeepers, they have a better understanding because the beehives, the bees are good for the whenua. They're good for the trees. So they're an intricate part of the growth of our environment. And so all of that are those conversations. So it's been really interesting. But for years, a lot of our industry in our country are just given away to the big Montgomery organisation. Then you might get a bucket out of it, you might get 2 cents out of it, whatever. No, it doesn't work. It cannot work that way. It had to be the way that we're talking about. Whakawhanaunatana. The business must be whakawhanaunatana.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for such a beautiful conversation. As we sort of wrap up, I want to ask my last question to you.
Yeah.
You're here in this space at CARE, and we are looking forward to working with you on a white paper on decolonizing ourselves to decolonize the structures. So what message would you have for us at CARE as well as for our audience?
Yeah, I think we just need to remove the decolonized process is removing the fears about your own self and believe in yourself. And so a lot of raising comes from fear. So you got to really just open some part of that particle. And really important that we need to kanohi ki te kanu, tanata ki te tanata. And you have mana, I got mana. And so we need to respect and understand that. I don't have to agree in everything that you say, but we need to have respect to that. I mean, I got brothers, I got family who are Mormon. I'm not only Mormon, but I still respect them. I love my brothers and sisters. I love them who they are, but they're allowed to be who they are. So we need to, so we have a very strong relationship of respect to each other. And I think it's about that. We got a lot of work to do, and we need to move. Aotearoa is our home. Aotearoa is your home and my home. So we need to focus around there to make this place for all of us safe. And we can all have an opinion, but let's make this place safe for us. For you to be able to argue to me, to sing to me, to cry with me, and all that. We can share that. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to a continuation of this conversation for the next few days.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Tāme.
Tāme.